For 9 whole days we sailed by night and day continually. And now on the 10th day my native land came in sight, and already we were so near that we beheld the folk tending the beacon fires. Then over me there came a sweet slumber in my weariness. For all the time I was holding the sheet, nor gave it to any of my company, that so we might come quicker to our own country. Meanwhile my company held converse together, and said that I was bringing home for myself gold and silver, gifts from Aeolus, the high-hearted son of Hippotas. And thus they would speak, looking each man to his neighbor. Lo now, how beloved he is, and highly esteemed among all men. To the city and the land whomsoever he may come. Many are the goodly treasures he taketh with him out of the spoil from Troy, while we, who have fulfilled like journeying with him, return homeward, bringing with us but empty hands, and now Aeolus hath given unto him these things freely in his love. Nay, come, let us quickly see what they are, even what wealth of gold and silver is in the wallet. So they spake, and the evil counsel of my company prevailed. They loosed the wallet, and all the winds brake forth, and the violent blast seized my men, and bare them towards the high seas sweeping, away from their own country. But as for me, I awoke and communed with my great heart, whether I should cast myself from the ship and perish in the deep, or endure in silence, and abide yet among the living. Howbeit I hardened my heart to endure, and muffling my head I lay still in the ship. But the vessels were driven by the evil storm wind back to the isle of Aeolian, and my company made moan. I don't want to lose sight of the fact that this is Odysseus telling the story of his journeys to Alcinous. It would be easy to lose sight of that fact, thinking that it's Homer speaking to us, the readers, which it is, but it's also filtered through this first perspective lens, and maybe, as I mentioned yesterday, it's because I'm reading Gene Wolfe for the first time that I'm like, oh yeah, I don't encounter unreliable narrators that often. Which I don't know was a thing when Homer was writing, but I don't think it's totally inappropriate to at least ask the question as to whether or not Odysseus is an unreliable narrator. Very simply, what happens here, as Odysseus yesterday said that they were never able to make it home because of their own heedlessness. Basically, the men feeling like they weren't getting their due opens up the wallet to see what treasure Aeolus has given Odysseus to take home with him, and in doing so, unleashes the winds, and just when they're in sight of Ithaca, send the ship all the way back to Aeolian. And when they get back there, quote, my company made moan. So that's what happens. Now, the way Odysseus is saying it, though, he is giving dialogue to his own men, and in doing so, an unreliable narrator with ulterior motives, say, to make himself look better, at the very least, if he's prideful, would soften the case against him. Now, I think he drives a fine line here, because I don't think he's necessarily making the men out to seem greedy, but when you pair it with Odysseus not once but twice, maybe even 3 times, I can't remember, going to the length of saying that he made sure to give every man his due so that no one would come back at him and yell at him. He said that with the flocks of sheep from Polyphemus. He said that with the sacking of Ismarus. Like, did he subtly put those in there so that when he says this, he's already planted the suggestion in our minds that he is a fair and just leader? Maybe he's not. If we are to take those into question and wonder whether or not Odysseus is greedy, or if he's not greedy, maybe he's not as fair as he thinks he is, if we're being generous about it. So that when his men decide to make Odysseus share his fair due by opening up this wallet, that is what leads to the dismay that they are currently encountering. Now, I'm not going to go into it because I'm not a scholar or academic and haven't fully read all of the analysis on this, but the idea that Odysseus is a unreliable narrator, as I've been calling it, but maybe more precisely that he isn't a fully truthful narrator, is an area of interest and writing within academia, which is interesting. Let's think about this for a second. As far as I remember, and it's been a long time since I've read the Iliad, there isn't really anything supernatural in it outside of like the lineage of Achilles. I could be wrong on that. Maybe some of like Hephaestus's stuff and like obviously the involvement of Athena, it's what have you, but no like Cyclops. Like I had a thought the other day after the Polyphemus episode where I was like, well, why didn't they just like recruit the Cyclopses for the Trojan War? Like, why is it just men? I mean, I guess the Cyclopses are, you know, a race unto themselves and uninterested in human affairs, mortal affairs. But, I mean, someone somewhere, there's all kinds of, like, gigantic beasts roaming around if we're to take the Theseus story as real. My point being, though, like, if the Iliad is all completely factual, and we look at the beginning of this story, the Odyssey, we get the Telemachus episodes, nothing really supernatural happens there. We get the Calypso episode before, I'm trying to like pinpoint all of the things that happens before Odysseus starts telling his own story. Calypso sends him off on a raft. That's not particularly supernatural. I guess he's visited by the nymph who gives him that scarf. Maybe. Yeah, I guess that veers into it a little bit. All of it to say is that if you start pulling on one of these things as unreliable, how far can you go? Did Odysseus end up on the Isle of the Cyclopes and have that incident with Polyphemus? Is what he's saying right now things that really happened? And if they are, did they happen the way he's saying they happened? How many times have you told a story, I'm raising my hand because I do it all the time, where you embellish like a little detail, like, oh, I could just see Ithaca right in the distance. Finally, we had made it home. And only then was the moment my men opened the wallet and blew us back to Aeolian. I don't know. It's a little strange. There's one thing I'm going to go do some research on that I've never heard of before, or if I have, I haven't logged it in my head, but some of the scholarly arguments for Odysseus being at least they call it a self-interested internal narrator rather than an unreliable one. It's something called the Cretan Tales or the Cretan Lies, saying that Odysseus is a proven liar, which would then make you wonder, well, what else does he lie about? And let's not forget, this is the last lens I'll put on this thing, is what do we know of Odysseus outside of learning it from Odysseus? He is a master strategist and technician. Could this be part of a larger strategy to get something out of the Phaeacians and Alcinous by telling him this version of the story? I don't know. But suddenly, Odysseus just kind of became a much more interesting character in my eyes. Let us continue with more of his story about trying to get home to Ithaca. And how does this lead us to Circe at some point? Join me here tomorrow. Okay, bye. Odyssey is part of the Gruntwork Podcast Network. The show is produced, edited, and hosted by Landon Solano. The original text of The Odyssey, written by Homer. Theme song by Neuroflow. You can support this show and other shows like it by going to patreon.com/gruntworkpod. Thank you for listening. See you tomorrow.